Deloris Mae Siddall was admired for her talent and beauty. She participated in national roller skating competitions in the early 50s and won many awards. Tragedy cut her life short, and 61 years later, it is unclear exactly what happened to her or where she is. Deloris was born on February 17, 1932, in Alva, Oklahoma. When Deloris was still very young, her parents moved the family to California, settling in Long Beach by 1941. In February of 1952, Deloris married Eugene Siddall, and the two had one daughter together before divorcing in 1956. Deloris went on to have two sons, but never again married. She supported herself and her three children by waitressing in various lounges as well as her father's cafe. In August of 1961, Deloris, who went by Dee, confided in some friends that she was pregnant and that she had contacted a man that could terminate the pregnancy, which was illegal at that time. On August 23rd, Deloris got a babysitter for her three children, and a man picked her up to take her to where the surgery was to be performed. When Deloris failed to return that night, the babysitter contacted the police. The police began investigating her disappearance and were given names and further information by some friends of Deloris to look into. They set up a sting at a Long Beach motel room where they arrested 28-year-old Hugh McLeod Feaster, a self-taught surgeon whose nickname was Mac the Knife. There were surgical instruments on the floor of the motel room, and Feaster was holding a syringe. He was also in possession of a gun. He was preparing to perform a surgery on a policewoman who feigned pregnancy as part of the sting. Later on, they arrested junior high school teacher Conrad Couch, Patricia Waltz, and 46-year-old Thomas Ciccarelli. Charges were eventually dropped against Waltz. Feaster and Ciccarelli were charged with kidnapping, murder, and operating an illegal surgery ring, and Couch was only charged with being involved with the ring. Ciccarelli was believed to be the person that set up the illegal surgery. At the trial, which commenced in early 1962, several women testified about going to Feaster's apartment where he performed illegal surgeries on them to terminate their pregnancies. Some were set up by Couch and others by Ciccarelli. Another witness, who was an upstairs neighbor of Feaster's, identified a photo of Deloris as the woman she saw ringing his doorbell on August 23rd. She was awakened at 12:30 a.m. by what sounded like things flying around Feaster's room. She then heard a woman moaning and crying. She testified to putting her ear on the floor and heard Feaster say, "Dee, you have to be quiet." She continued listening and heard a shower running and Feaster repeating the name Dee. Then she heard something being dragged across the floor. The defense pushed the fact that Deloris's body was never found, which means she could still be alive somewhere, and just decided to abandon her three children. Several defense witnesses testified that Ciccarelli couldn't have been involved in Deloris's surgery because they saw him at a bar he worked at the entire night. After 6 weeks of testimony, the jury spent 4 days deliberating. They found Feaster and Ciccarelli guilty of 1 count of attempted illegal surgery and 3 counts of illegal surgery, and not guilty of murder. A mistrial was declared for Couch, as the jury was unable to come to a verdict in his case. Feaster was free for a year on an appeal bond, and while out, he was arrested for car theft and bank robbery. His appeal was denied, and he was set to appear before the judge in the illegal surgery case. Before that could happen, however, he confessed to being responsible for Deloris's death. Feaster claimed that she became ill and he gave her injections and medications to try to save her life, but she died anyway. He wrapped her body in a sheet and put it in a duffel bag and put it in the trunk of his car and stopped for coffee before driving around for 2 days trying to find a place to dump her body, which was down a steep ravine near Lake Arrowhead in the San Bernardino Mountains. Because he was already tried for Deloris's murder and found not guilty, he could not be tried again. Officers believed the reason for his confession was fear of retribution, as he was a star witness against 3 death row prisoners serving at San Quentin Prison for robbery and murder. Feaster thought that confessing would persuade the judge not to send him to San Quentin and to have his sentence run concurrently. He was given a polygraph examination as to the truthfulness of these latest claims and passed. After that, it was agreed that he would lead a team of detectives and crime lab technicians to the area where he dumped Deloris's body. Despite several searches up and down the rugged San Bernardino Mountains, they never found a trace of Deloris. A week after Feaster led investigators to where he claimed he dumped Deloris's body, he appeared before Superior Judge Beach Vasey. The defendant took a calculated risk and lost. He was playing with the lives of women for monetary gains, the judge said, before sentencing Feaster to 3 2 to 5 year and 1 12 to 18-month terms to run concurrently. It is unclear what, if any, time he received for the bank robbery, gun possession, and auto theft. It is also unclear what sentence, if any, the other defendant, Thomas Ciccarelli, received. However, in September of 1963, Ciccarelli was arrested for assaulting a 16-year-old girl. He was later found to be a mentally disordered sexual offender and committed to the Atascadero State Hospital in San Luis Obispo County. By 1974, Feaster had been released from prison. On June 1st of that year, Feaster, along with another man named Angelo Inciso, an ex-convict with a long criminal history, kidnapped 16-year-old Larry Adele, who was the son of a wealthy Detroit industrialist named Robert Adele. They sent ransom letters demanding $400,000 on several different occasions, but the handing over of the money was never successful. Questions arose as to whether Larry Adele was in on the kidnapping plot, because he was aware that his father owned $400,000 in municipal bonds. Jimmy Hoffa, a former Teamsters Union president who went missing on July 30th, 1975, and his body has never been found, was an old family friend of Robert Adele. Hoffa met with Feaster and Inciso in the Los Angeles County Jail after they were arrested, imploring them to tell him where the body of Larry Adele was, saying, "You're going to fry if you don't come up with this boy." Larry Adele's body was found on November 19, 1977, in a remote area near Palm Springs. The 2 men were found guilty on 12 charges and given 70 years on 11 of those charges and life on 1 of the charges to run concurrently. Feaster was sent to Leavenworth Prison in Kansas. Inciso was sent to federal prison in Atlanta. In 1976, both men appealed the conviction, citing insufficient evidence. The conviction and sentence was upheld. It is unclear whether or not the 2 men were ever charged with the murder of Larry Adele, but it seems they were later eventually let out of prison. Feaster died at the age of 78 on February 15, 2011, in Missouri. Angelo Inciso died in 1997 in Texas at the age of 84. This was a difficult case to put together. The information is old and scattered about. Sadly, there was more information out there about the perpetrators than there was about Deloris, which is who I wanted the focus of this episode to be on. I was able to connect with one of her family members and was told that her disappearance deeply affected her son, and he has spent a lot of time and energy trying to figure out what happened to her. Even though the chances are remote, if anyone out there has any information about Deloris Siddall, please call the Long Beach Police Department at 562-570-7260.